This episode contains spoilers for Life is Strange. As such, this episode discusses suicide and ableism as depicted in the game. Hello and welcome back to the Push a Smart Water Cooler. This week we are going to be discussing Life is Strange Episode 3, Chaos Theory. At the end of Episode 2, things got very dark very quickly as Kate attempted suicide. Both Stacey and I were able to talk her down, and this episode picks up the night that happened. So, not much time has passed, and you kind of jump right into it. First thing you do is you feed Kate's bunny, and it's really emotional.
Is that the first thing you do?
That's the first thing I did.
Okay. The last episode, the ending was a stunner. And so it kind of gives you some time to reflect and also see how the community at Blackwell, not Prescott Academy, thank you, commenter, for correcting me. The Blackwell Academy is dealing with it.
And I really liked how the episode, it's both something that I dislike and like, because I dislike that we don't see Kate at all, really. You get one text message from her.
And that worries me.
Exactly. And everything else is just people's response to the tragedy. Chloe took David's key to the school, so they're about to break in, and then they see Mr. Jefferson and Victoria having a really weird after-school session.
Mm-hmm.
She tries to be very flirty and obvious, but Mr. Jefferson kind of pushes her away.
And then she also threatens him to blame him. Like, she threatens to say that what they were doing was illicit.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't pick her piece for the art show or something. Like, it's that kind of stuff is so stereotypical and really cringeworthy.
I'm still very suspicious of Jefferson, obviously. And so I thought maybe what's happening is, it's not necessarily that he doesn't have affairs with students, or who knows what he does, but because of the whole Kate Marsh situation, he knows that eyes are going to be on him. And so he's trying to play everything down, be like, no, I'm not being weird.
I was almost wondering, because there's also, like, in the beginning, you get to kind of surf on Max's computer and see some of the immediate payoffs for what you did. Like, you get to see the people posting on, like, the equivalent of Kate's Facebook wall. You get to see, there was, like, a page on mine that was in support of Mr. Jefferson. And so I was wondering that scene. I was like, is this like the author reaching through and being like, you made a bad decision. We love Mr. Jefferson and his John Lennon and his goatee. He's a cool teacher. And
I don't think so, because as David points out later in the episode, you can't trust a grown man with a goatee.
That made me laugh.
Yeah. You didn't have a page from Mr. Jefferson, but I did have another text message from the unknown number. And obviously Nathan. Mm-hmm. And he's basically calling Max a feminazi. No. Yeah, which I don't know. It like,
there was a post like that, I think, on the Jefferson Facebook page. I think.
Really? And then there's graffiti later in the episode that says Max is a feminazi, and I think it's in the girls' locker room.
Oh.
But after the whole Jefferson scene, you and Chloe, you have to find a way to open the principal's office door, and Warren helps you by offering to give you directions to build a pipe bomb, because that's not weird. And
boyfriend material, ladies. Help you build a pipe bomb, won't ask any questions.
Yeah. Which, one of the things that brought up a lot in the comments last episode is that me and Stacey were kind of smitten by Warren's little charm, I guess. But people in the episode are getting bad vibes from him. And apparently, if you watered your plant in the last episode, you could kind of see him peeking into Max's room, which is creepy. And the person who pointed that out was commenter Louis Cruz. So thank you for pointing that out. And now I feel bad for liking Warren if he's going to end up being a creeper.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't see it. I didn't see him peeking in the window. You do find, though, in the locker room, he has a picture of him and Max. But, you know, whatever.
That is kind of like a teenagey thing,
That is a teenagey thing to do.
I could kind of write off the peeking as kind of like a sort of crushy thing. I mean, I didn't see it, so I'm not sure how, like, leery it is.
Yeah, if it's like Mike Myers behind the hedge. But yeah, obviously there is enough of a consensus in our comments that
maybe
seems,
we're wrong.
Yeah, I think that theory might hold some water. I hope it doesn't. because I'm selfish. But that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
This part when you're trying to break into the principal's office is really the first of kind of many little collection quests in the game.
Yes.
Some of which aren't as effective as others. I found this one wasn't as transparent in its attempts to get you to explore the world, because you're kind of going through the school and you're picking out like sugar and a soda can and all these different things, as opposed to later in the game when you're trying to figure out where in the world Joyce keeps her eggs.
Because it's not in the fridge.
No.
If there was a problem with the second episode, it would be that bottle collection.
It really stuck out.
It really stuck out. It felt very gamey in the sense that it's like, okay, you have to do X, Y, Z to proceed. Whereas I think this game benefits the most when it hides those kind of goalposts and just kind of lets you explore and discover organically, because it needs to have that confidence that you want to explore. You want to see what's going on at the school at night. You want to get to know what's going on in this town.
Something that really stuck out was immediately after this when you're inside the principal's office and Max picks up a file and she's reading through it, and then when she puts it down, she's like, okay, I need 2 more files.
Right.
Where did this number come from?
Exactly. It's like, if I have 3 files, I will have enough evidence.
Move on in the game.
There's a lot of things in this episode. I guess this episode gives us a lot of information about characters. And just because we know this is a Telltale-esque game, and we don't necessarily know what Don't Not Entertainment doesn't necessarily have the track record yet for us to know what's going on with it. Some of these discoveries make me very apprehensive. And one of them was the fact that Kate is mostly absent in this episode. And one of the other ones comes when you're just rummaging through all the files in the principal's office. You find a hidden record of Nathan's behavior in which someone on the faculty reports his erratic behavior, which is the game kind of intrinsically links to his really awful behavior where he takes advantage of, Kate, you, Chloe, and then in turn links that to some sort of undiagnosed mental illness. And implores his parents to treat it, and they don't respond favorably. And that could potentially be a huge issue.
Yeah.
Depending on what they go with that.
I know. On one hand, I feel like it's very common for kids growing up who do deal with mental issues or being neuroatypical for educators to kind of blame everything on that. As opposed to, like, he's a spoiled shit who gets away with everything and gets his file expunged because his parents can pay it off.
Yeah, in this case, he's not getting any help.
Yeah.
From anyway, his parents, they're refusing to acknowledge any sort of neuroatypical behavior. They're refusing to punish any other behavior. And we found out later they stick a cop on him to spy on him, basically.
Yeah. That was definitely one of those red flag moments.
Yeah.
For this episode, of which there are several.
Unfortunately. But then again, like I said, it's like nothing comes to pass yet.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We don't know. They could handle this with flying colors. It could stumble. It's just because there's no track record. The only thing we have is the Telltale formula that they're emulating, which has not dealt with these things very well in the past.
Exactly. And in the principal's office, we kind of get the first big choice of the episode, which
is a very Telltale choice.
It's
Yeah.
Telltale, but it's like the bad kind of Telltale, like this kind of cartoonish decision between like angel on your shoulder or devil on your shoulder. Are you going to leave the $5,000 or are you going to steal $5,000 from the handicapped people of the school? Like, it just
clumsy foreshadowing.
It is really clumsy.
One thing that I think the game does that is interesting is there are shades of like a moral dilemma in every time you rewind, because you're manipulating time in order to gain personal information from people that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily have surrendered to you.
Exactly.
So there is an interesting kind of conversation about morality that can happen there. But this is just, burn down the orphanage or don't.
Yeah. I liked the way that they were playing with morality in not always subtle ways, but definitely more subtle than this. Like, for example, with Dana and the pregnancy test. Like,
right.
You're kind of forcing something out of her. At the next moment, you act caring because you have this knowledge that's going to let their defenses down.
Right.
And I wish there was a bit more of a play on that than this. But we do get some nice Max and Chloe moments. They break into the swimming pool, and then they have one of those moments that we've really been enjoying in Life is Strange, the kind of slow character-based moments where you're just kind of letting it wash all over you. They're just floating in the pool, and they're just kind of talking about themselves, and then Rachel gets brought up.
This might be a good time to mention, we got an ask on our Tumblr after our last episode on Life is Strange that said they were wondering why we didn't talk about the possible LGBT themes in Life is Strange. And part of it is, obviously you can't touch on everything in these, 15, 20-minute episodes, but that was a little bit more of a subtext that we didn't really touch on when so much more was going on in the main text. And this episode, though, with these moments in the pool especially, bring that subtext to the text itself.
I particularly didn't want to mention the possible LGBT kind of subtext of where Max and Chloe's relationship could be heading, or where Chloe and Rachel's relationship was, because I didn't want to take away from an intimate friendship with no kind of romantic undertones.
Because romance is often treated, not necessarily between two women, because that's very rare, but in games, romance uses kind of a shortcut to get you to care about something.
Exactly.
It's like, it boils down to that simple. Mario is saving his girlfriend. It's like, okay, goal is important because romance, even though there's nothing romantic at all about the game. And the fact that seeing two women interact on screen is so rare at all, I can definitely see that. But now that has become the text, what are our thoughts?
I'm glad that they didn't just come out and say it. I'm glad that we kind of got to learn about Rachel on her own as opposed to Chloe's potential girlfriend, Rachel. Particularly the way that it's gone on, it feels very...
Would you say organic?
I would say organic. I'd say it's very organic from the age that they're in. That they're teenagers. It's not easy being queer, particularly, in a small town in Oregon. And the way that this thing slowly comes out, kind of trust is building between these two characters again after a long absence. And then she finally feels comfortable enough to mention her crush on Rachel. And I felt that was very organic and very well done.
And I'm glad it's not something we had to rewind to manipulate out of her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that would have been bad.
Yeah. One thing I don't know about the way that this episode particularly doubles Max and Rachel, to the point that Max wears Rachel's old clothes and is mistaken for Rachel by several characters.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what to do with that.
It kind of makes me uncomfortable, but I feel like that's intentional. I think it's almost hinting at issues between Chloe and Rachel's relationship that Chloe wouldn't either notice or divulge. And this becomes more evident later in the game when you find out that Rachel was in a relationship with Frank that Chloe had no idea about.
Yeah. It kind of made me think back to last episode where you're exploring the junkyard and you find the graffiti that was like Rachel was here, Chloe was here, and you get to add it, Max was here. And I did that, but I felt guilty doing it. I felt like I was invading a space I didn't belong in. And I was thinking about that when Max was being dressed up to look like Rachel. And I wasn't sure, that it just...
Because now you're kind of being invited into that space.
Yeah.
But you're being invited into an empty space as opposed to your own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're taking a spot that was already filled by one person. It's Rachel-shaped, and you're vaguely Rachel-shaped, so you're going to slide right in there. Which
leads us to the next big choice of the game, which is Chloe double dares you to kiss her.
And we did, and I was shocked to see just how many people did. Well, when I played, I think it did go up when you played to 78. When I played, it was 77% kiss Chloe.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And I feel like this game has been very inviting towards queer people because of the subtext and because of the kind of teenage game of it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same way that Gone Home was a very personal story that queer people could really relate to, but it had this universality to it where you ended up rooting for the queer characters. And so it made me so happy that people kind of wanted to kind of see where this relationship would go in that way.
We don't really see much of where it goes in that way after that. Discussing how universal this experience is and how friendly it is made me think of, there's this great article on Paste that discusses how Life is Strange hits a lot of the same beats as young adult fiction, and yet because of the way our rating system works, it is something that young people are discouraged from playing because it's rated M.
It's rated M, really?
It's rated M.
Wow.
This happens a lot in other mediums. These stories that are very pertinent to children and then into teens, and then they are locked out from seeing their own stories played out on screen.
Or the only stories that they're able to see are kind of very sterilized versions of it.
Right. And this kind of, we don't see that come up in games a lot. And it raised the important, like the headline itself is, where are all the young adult games? And I don't know if I'm necessarily going with that, but I thought that was a really interesting point, and this episode kind of exemplifies that, because there is that kind of slow, kind of lingering feeling at the beginning where you just kind of get to hang out with Chloe and learn more about Chloe and Max's relationship. And it's like, that is exactly the kind of thing teenagers, especially as you said, queer teenagers, would probably want to experience.
Yeah.
But our system is created in such a way that it would bar them from it.
Mm-hmm. So the next big part is you kind of go into this investigation in the garage while Chloe throws a fit with Joyce to kind of distract her, which I found really interesting, because at first she starts being really rude, and I'm like, gosh, why are you being so... And oh, okay, I get it. Thank you. And then you go into the garage, and you have to figure out what David's password is. And in doing this, you kind of get to step out of the step douche and get to see more of kind of who David is and what is important to him.
Right. It humanizes him a lot. We got to see a little bit more of a sympathetic look at Chloe's stepfather and mother in the last episodes by talking with Joyce. In this episode, we get to see more mementos from David that he keeps close that humanize him. Like, that he buys a birthday card, and fills it out and thanks Chloe for welcoming him into her family, even though she was giving him a hard time the whole time. Mm-hmm. It's like he's trying. And I found that very sympathetic, even though a lot of the ways he was trying are totally backwards.
Exactly. And you can tell that he really loves Joyce. And which is weird, because that love for Joyce is the password that leads you to him spying on underage children.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, it's like, you can see he's been spying on Kate and Rachel. On one hand, you're fighting the same fight. He knows something really bad is going on, but he is drawing all the wrong conclusions from it. Because his notes are all like, Kate's acting funny, must be drugs. Yeah. I don't know, growing up in like the 80s and 90s, that's a very, stereotypical grown up in movies type of thing. It's like,
drugs or Satanism, one of the two.
Yeah.
So David ends up coming home, and big fight between Chloe and David. And your next big decision is choosing who you're going to side with, David or Chloe. Mm-hmm. Who did you side with?
I ended up siding with David. I chose to do it more to kind of calm Chloe down. I still wanted to get more of David's information, because I do think we're on the same path as far as trying to get the information. It's just he's doing it in such a messed up way.
Yeah. I chose to side with Chloe. Mm-hmm. I didn't really want to at first, so I had to rewind and see both. But the reason I stuck with siding with Chloe is because Max brings up the surveillance, which shocks Joyce. And I felt like it was important for Joyce to know about not only the surveillance of the kids, but the surveillance in her own home. Mm-hmm. And that leads to, obviously, a lot of tension between the two. Mm-hmm. And so she says, you should get a hotel. And he's like, you can't kick me out of my house. And she's like, this is my house. You have to go.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, in mine, it kind of deflates. The part I distinctly remember is like, David's just like, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm going to sleep. So there wasn't even that kind of big confrontation. But that totally, I would imagine, changes everything, because you have David presumably out of the equation as far as doing his own investigation.
When you sided with Chloe, that kind of led to one of my favorite moments of the episode. Mm-hmm. When you're about to leave, you can talk to Chloe, and she's just like, don't rewind. I really liked that. And then from there, you go to talk to Frank to figure out what their relationship was. And this is another one of those moments where you're kind of going around and you're getting information from people, rewinding to use it against them or other people, which sounded like a really cool idea, but there were moments when I started like tuning out when I knew it wasn't going to be important, which bored me.
There is a sense of, you didn't even have to listen to what they were saying. You would just like click forward, look for the new underlined option. Okay, now I need to carry that to the next guy. Like, it was, again, that kind of transparent, gamey aspect of it.
once you get the keys from Frank,
you can either be a heartless bastard and throw the bone into traffic, or you can just throw it into the parking lot where presumably the dog won't be hit by a backing car.
Oh, and also, before we go in there, we have another run-in with Alyssa.
Yes, very important.
You can save her from a car splashing water on her. And she's like, wow, Max, this is the third time that's happened. You're my guardian angel.
Rooting for the tornado 2x4. I'm rooting for it. I'm hoping this will be a thing. We're almost there.
And then we get into the RV and we find evidence from Rachel, like love letters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it really throws Chloe. She gets really pissed off. Then she's driving Mac back to school and she's kind of opening up about how everything's fucked up and how nothing in her life works, and she blames it all on the moment her father died.
And then we discover, when they're at their very lowest, Max has a new superpower.
She rewinds all the way back to the day that Chloe's father died. So Chloe's father gets into a car accident. Once you rewind time, your objective is to hide his keys so that he has to take the bus.
This worked.
This was one of those quote-unquote gamey moments that was integrated really well.
In part, it was because the fact that he reacted to it, and you had to constantly be paying attention to what he was doing, and to then rewind and get one step ahead of him. Exactly. And it's like this was what this rewind ability was designed to do.
Mm-hmm. When you're successful, you flash forward in time, and everything's different. Ish.
Yeah.
You're a part of the Vortex Club. Victoria's your friend. She calls you Maxine. What? And David's a bus driver. And all the whales are dead.
And Warren's with someone else.
Oh, yeah. I like how that was when she was like, everything's wrong. Yeah. Because she realizes the butterfly effect of it all. The first thing she does is she runs to Chloe's house. And Chloe's father greets her at the door. And then there's this really awkward, clumsy, potentially problematic moment.
The big reveal. I kept picturing it from like this timeline's Chloe's, and it's like, your best friend is here. Oh my God, I can't even look at her.
Exactly. It was so like...
It was so bad.
It was so bad.
Don't know where it's going to go. And that makes us a little bit nervous.
That does. What potentially problematic discussions are going to get into the next episode about...
able-bodiedness.
Yeah, able-bodiedness. Like, would you rather be able-bodied or have a dead father? Like...
And also, I'm wondering about, like, the connotations here. If Chloe never rebelled and dyed her hair blue, would she still be kicked out of Blackwell? Mm-hmm. Did she ever attend Blackwell? Is Rachel in the picture now? Yeah. Since, Max is a member of the Vortex Club, did she terrorize Kate? Did that stuff never happen because Max made the Vortex Club good by her presence? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so, like, does this erase the mystery up to this point?
I don't know. That's the thing that I'm worried about because I was invested in that mystery. And this was definitely a big twist, but it's not one that I'm interested in exploring. So,
the end of the first episode, cautiously optimistic. Ended last episode, very optimistic. Ended this episode...
very cautious. Yeah.
So let's get to choices. We kind of talked about most of them. Mm-hmm. Most of the big ones. So we both left the money. Surprisingly, that is pretty evenly split.
Yeah.
When I played, it was 56% left the money, 44% stole the money.
And then when I played, 78% kissed Chloe, and 22% didn't.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then siding with David versus Chloe, when I played, it was 13% with David.
Same here. It was 87% when I sided with Chloe.
Mm-hmm. And then, clearly, we kept Frank's dog from as much harm as we could, given this terrible plan.
Yeah. And then there was that weird choice that I didn't even realize was a choice. And I'm guessing it's if things go south with Frank, or who knows. Maybe it's if you have the money or not. But David's gun can end up going to Frank.
I wonder how that happens. Please tell us.
Yes, because I have no idea. The last episode, we asked in the comments who you pointed the finger at, who you thought was up to no good. And there was a lot of people who pointed the finger at Jefferson. A lot of the 7% are apparently our commenters.
Yes, we are the 7%.
And then, of course, there were also some Nathan as well. So this week, we want to know what your thoughts are on the big, possibly game-changing twist of the episode. So let us know in the comments, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date on all of our latest episodes and water cooler discussions.
Max, that gave me chills. And you better not rewind this one.